All right. So we're having another late night stream. I'm just wait for people to start trickling in. I want to say in advance, even though he's not here, I want to thank, a couple of people. Um, one of them being Alejandro, who gave me a suggestion on fixing the camera. And hey, GW, him and Tim. Hi, Enzo. And it was actually it was embarrassingly simple. I told people, I told you all that I'm not technically proficient, but I realized after I fiddled with the settings for 5 or 6 minutes at the suggestion of someone on Twitter, I looked at the top row of keys on my keyboard. I'm sorry for the lighting here. And there's one key that has a little camera with a slash through it, which is helpful because it uh, it blocks the camera from recording you. So if you don't want the camera recording you, or you can just press that. So apparently, what happened is that I inadvertently pressed that, which is why when I tried to live stream, uh, you just saw the camera with the slash through it. You couldn't see any video, and I tried that. It was like that for about a week until some of the helpful people from some of the helpful people watching my channel mentioned, one of them in particular. So thanks, Alejandro, for your service. That was actually really helpful because I didn't even think. It seems very simple, but it's something that I overlooked. Anyway, I wanted to talk since I didn't get to make a video about this at the time, and I know David Wood and Act 17, his channel, he's already put out a few videos, if I'm not mistaken, addressing this. But the ritualistic beheading of a teacher who discussed and showed the Mohammed cartoon, or one of the depictions of Mohammed. She I believe the teacher actually displayed some sort of portrait or depiction, pictorial example of Mohammed. And Alejandro, I was just talking about you, thanking you for the suggestion vis-a-vis my camera situation. As you can see, it's been rectified. Yeah, I don't know if he's read all of the. I don't know if he's read all of the hadith. A hadith. There are a lot of them. I mean, there's Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, and then there are I think there are 3 or 4 other major collections, some of which are supposedly less valid or less authentic. And David Wood has explained why the categorization of these hadith is completely ridiculous, because they they're Muslims, what they're essentially doing, they're claiming that these hadith are authentic based upon the people that compile them, and the fact that they're being used. So the fact that more Muslims put their trust in Sahih Bukhari or Sahih Muslim rather than other hadith is a testament to their authenticity, which is a circular argument. I mean, there's no there's no real reliable historical evidence to say that these sayings of Muhammad are more accurate than these other which Muslims accept are more accurate than these other sayings which Muslims categorically reject or reject partially. There's no in other words, they don't have any real metric to determine which hadith are more reliable than other hadith. It's essentially you're you're trusting the word of imams who are wholly invested in preserving the image of Islam and the image of Muhammad. So they're the ones, but there's no scientific basis to trust Sahih Bukhari or Sahih Muslim more than that's so-called weak hadith. There's no it's um it's kind of like a hall of mirrors in a way. so um but I mean, even if you say that they're more authentic, it doesn't really prove anything. I mean, the gospels are some of the most authenticated pieces of literature from ancient times in terms of the number of copies and the reliability, particularly Luke Acts. If you look at those two books in the Bible, which were originally one manuscript, if you look at that, it's like reading a um, a biography, a well documented biography about a current historical figure or a historical figure of the past century. And that's what it reads like. It doesn't read like the hadith, which resemble Superman comic books or Marvel comic books or DC comic books, where you have all of these glaring inconsistencies and legendary stories. And I don't mean just in the sense of describing something miraculous, because, I mean, obviously, if you believe in the Bible, you believe in miraculous events, and you don't reject something just because it has a non-naturalistic explanation. But the way these events are described in the hadith and in the Quran are so at variance with what you would expect if these were historical books. And even the description of Muhammad's life, the non miraculous parts, are so riddled with error that you can't really describe any of it as reliable. It's like a bunch of books written by a completely unreliable narrator or several narrators. Yeah, the lighting, I'll admit this, the lighting is not good, particularly when I do these late night streams. But anyway, uh, just to go just to go back, um, just to go back to my original point, I I didn't do a video initially on that, but I did want to talk about it a little bit, not specifically that, the murder and the beheading itself, but what it says about Islam, because a lot of people, and I've done a lot of videos like this where the under intellectual cornerstones of Islam and the Quran are attacked. And it's very easy, if you analyze if you analyze Islamic texts critically, it's very easy to undermine them. This is one of the reasons that there's no critical scholarship within Islam, because once you start to take apart the Quran and the Hadith and the Sirat, once you start to examine critically examine these texts, they completely fall apart. I mean, it's so obvious to point out the chronological errors, the historical misstatements, the scientific errors, and the complete misunderstanding that Muhammad's followers had of critical key biblical insights. They had a misunderstanding of who Jesus was, of who Abraham was, obviously, and also a grave misunderstanding of soteriology, how people are saved, and also eschatology, the end times. And you can just poke holes in Islam. And this is why the debates between Muslim apologists and Christian apologists are so embarrassing, because you have people defending something that's very easily knocked down if you look at it from a critical perspective. If you don't accept the premises of Muslims, which is how Islam survived, not and expanded simply by accepting these things and not questioning them and threatening people who do question them. But putting that aside, even if you don't want to examine these critical deficiencies, the intellectual basis of Islam, another way you can, and I think this is also very important, another way you can undermine the claim that Islam has any, or undermine the argument that Islam has any valid truth claims, is looking at what Islam has spawned. What, because one of the good ways of judging something is looking at its effects. What comes about as a result of believing a certain philosophy or ideology, a certain belief system? What's the result of subscribing to their tenets, what they espouse as truth? And this is how this you can understand why something like communism or socialism is such an evil, insidious belief system, because you can look at at the results. You have empirical evidence, because it's been tested out on human subjects over the past century. So you can look at Russia, Eastern Europe, China, Ethiopia, Somalia, Cuba, uh, Nicaragua. You can look at almost more than 60% of the global population at one point or another was under the yoke of communism. And you can look at what the results were: democide, mass death, starvation, economies that imploded, uh, the institution of mass paranoia. In Eastern Europe, you had you had an entire society that had become essentially a secret police because of mutual blackmail and suspicion. So you can look at the results of these things and arrive at a fairly simple conclusion that ideology is evil because of what resulted from it. And I think you can do the same thing with Islam. You don't need to even look at the intellectual roots of Islam and the falsity of their claims, even though those are very apparent. You can look at what Islam has wrought in the world at large, among civilization, and you find support for this biblically. So in Matthew 5:16, let me just go there for a moment. No, actually, I'm going to look at Matthew. Yeah, Matthew chapter 7. So in chapter 7 in verse 15, it says, "Beware of false prophets." Now, this is a great description of Muhammad and his companions, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. Ye shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore, by their fruits ye shall know them. And this is an idea that's repeated throughout the Gospels and throughout the Bible, generally speaking. So in chapter 12:34, Jesus again, when he confronts the Pharisees, he says, "O generation of vipers, how can ye, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh." So they're revealing their evil nature through their speech. "A good man out of the good treasure of the heart bringeth forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure bringeth forth evil things." So again, this is a point that's emphasized throughout the Gospels and throughout the New Testament. In Romans, okay, it's brought up in Romans, and I'll go to that shortly. But the idea is, you can't, no matter how much you say this is a religion of peace and this is a religion of love and this is a great Abrahamic religion, which is also false. No matter how many times you repeat that, if the religion produces evil things and it manifests itself in evil ways, then you cannot then say this is a good religion or this religion is rooted in truth. It's impossible. And when you look at Islam, what Islam has brought forth, it is almost uniformly evil fruit, which isn't to say that there aren't Muslims do um, who do things that are good, who aren't who don't lead peaceable lives, who have, but the thing is, you can't ascribe whatever behavior they do, which is laudable, to Islam, because if you follow the precepts of Islam to their logical conclusion, then you're going to bring forth evil fruit. It's not in question. And you see that when you ask a random person what they think, what do they think when they think of Islam, and this applies universally in almost any non-Muslim country. They'll say the World Trade Center attacks. They'll say the Bali bombings, the London tube bombings, beheading people who criticize Mohammed or who depict Mohammed, burning down embassies, enslaving Yazidi girls in northern Iraq, destroying Roman architecture in Syria, destroying monuments in Afghanistan, uh, putting women into purdah, throwing acid on women's faces, murdering or raping women who aren't veiled. Riots in India. That's another good. Burning down trains in India, bombing, taking an entire hotel hostage, and murdering hundreds of people in Mumbai. They'll say ISI in Pakistan, which is the hub of terrorism, basically. In addition to Saudi Arabia, they'll bring up Wahhabi clerics calling for the murder of non-Muslims. They'll bring up ISIS, Al Qaeda. They're almost every single example you can provide of what Islam has done, not individual Muslims who you may know in personally, but what Islam has done has been evil. All of their fruit are evil, and it doesn't matter whether it's Orthodox Sunni Islam, like you see in Saudi Arabia, or Shia Islam, as you see in Iran and Iraq, where you have Shiite death squads murdering people, or if it's Barelvi Islam, or more heterodox Islamic or quasi-Islamic cults. There's no part of Islam which has brought forth good fruit. You can't. What's most associated with Islam is murdering people and enslaving people for either not being Muslim or criticizing some aspect, some central feature of Islam, whether it be the Quran or the exaltation of Muhammad, or simply any aspect of Islam that's core to the religion, attacking people who question that. That's what Islam is associated with, and it's not a matter of a negative media campaign or learning about this in school. It's simply an evidence of attacks on Christians in Sri Lanka. That's another good example. Sri Lanka is a great illustration of the dichotomy here. Good trees bearing good fruit and bad trees bearing bad fruit. Now, in Sri Lanka, what do you associate Christianity with in Sri Lanka? This is a population of 8 to 10%. 8 to 10% of Sri Lanka is Christian. So it's a very small minority. The predominant religion there is Buddhism, and the Sinhala Buddhists have controlled that country ever since independence from Great Britain. But there's a significant minority of Hindu Tamils in the north, in the Jaffna Peninsula, even after a lot of them fled during the Civil War. So it's predominantly Buddhist and with a significant Hindu minority, and you have a small Christian minority. But what do you associate Christianity with in Sri Lanka? These are people who build almost all of the hospitals, schools, the business community. They've contributed to the productivity of the economy, even despite the fact that it's a country that underwent more than 2-decade-long civil war. So you have followers of Jesus Christ doing what he commanded his disciples to do. They're going out, they're making disciples, but they're also loving their neighbors, despite the fact that very few of their neighbors are Christians. They're contributing to the the success of that country. And what do you associate Islam with in Sri Lanka? You associate it with church bombings, destroying and churches and murdering innocent people because they're not Muslims. And you also associate it with a girl, a Sri Lankan girl, who fled her parents because they were Muslims and they were going to honor kill her because um, because she accepted Christ. So you have one community which follows and tries to live in obedience to Christ, and they're associated with schools, hospitals, caring for their neighbors. And you have another community which unfortunately is shackled to an evil book and a false prophet, and they're associated with suicide bombings, with terror, with despite the fact that Muslims themselves are a small minority in Sri Lanka. But I just use this as an illustration to show you what the difference is, and to clarify the point that you can't have a rotten tree that bears good fruit. If the source of your beliefs is evil and malevolent, then you're not going to act in an ethical way or a moral way. You're not going to exude love for your neighbor. It's simply impossible. And this is at the core of Scripture, of the Gospels, as I just pointed out. And it's not just that they do evil things because they've been misled, because it's that they delight in others doing evil things. So this is what you see when you go online and you see Muslims praising the assassin of this teacher, or when you see the Pakistani father, who belongs to this Sufi order, the Pakistani father of the man who murdered and tried to kill people outside of the former offices of Charlie Hebdo. You see people delighting not just in doing evil, but in other people doing evil, and this is something that Paul points out in the first chapter of Romans. So in Romans, so in Romans 31, he's describing people who are people who have people who are reprobate. So he says, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. So you have, it's not just a matter of going out and killing people for disagreeing with your with the cult you belong to. It's having delight in the people who do that. So that's another huge problem with Islam, and again, it's a reflection of this principle that you can't have good fruit coming from a bad tree. It's just it's not possible. And when the core of your ideology is advancing Islam regardless of whether or not it's true, then you're embracing you're embracing something that's manifestly evil. So, which is why, if you look at the Quran, it not only encourages murder, it encourages lying. So in First John, let me see if I can, and this will be my last verse. So in First John chapter 3, and let me see, and First John chapter 3, verse 11, it says, "For this is the message that ye heard from the beginning, that we should love one another, not as Cain, who was of that wicked one, i.e., Satan, and slew his brother. And wherefore slew he him? Because his own works were evil and his brother's righteous." So this gets to the core of the problem with Islam. It's not focused on finding the truth, and it's certainly not focused on love. It's focused on perpetuating Islam and allegiance to Muhammad. And if you have a religion that says it's okay to kill, then that religion is not tethered to the truth, because God is love. Jesus is described as love, as truth. He's a righteous God, and he's a God that cannot lie. Throughout the Bible, it's emphasized that this is a God that cannot lie. So, in contrast to that, you have Islam, which has a God which not only can lie and does lie, but encourages his disciples to lie. And you have a God that's completely disconnected from the idea of love. Love is a concept that's completely foreign to Islamic doctrine. So I just wanted to make this video to point out the fact that it it goes beyond even the fundamental falsity of Islam. The truth claims in the Quran and the Hadith, they're very easily debunked and exposed, and you have a bunch of channels that are dedicated to that, like Christian Prince and Rob Christian and Sam Shamoon and Act 17 apologetics. You have tons of channels that are dedicated to that. But even beyond that, there's a sort of observational data point or data points that you can collect just by looking at what Islam does to the people who embrace it. And you can't say that a religion is good if the practitioners of that religion do evil things, and you can't say a religion is valid, should be accepted, if that religion rejects the cornerstone of love and says that love is not important at all, and that the important thing is simply to perpetuate that religion, because that's what every single false religion and cult does, whether it's the Jehovah's Witnesses or the Mormons or Scientology. But in Islam, you have a very clear-cut case where you can look around, and an average person, even someone who's never read the Quran or never read the Bible, they can simply look at the results of Islam and use their own cognitive skills to analyze it and say that this is a false religion. And the beheading of the teacher in France is just the latest illustration of that. Anyway, those are just my thoughts. Again, thanks, Alejandro, for helping me pointing out a very easy fix, which I kind of overlooked because, like I said, I'm not that computer savvy. But um, anyway, I'll see all of you very shortly. Have a good night.